Good evening, friends. After 95 years walking this earth, you learn a thing or two about time, how fast it moves, how quietly it steals what you thought would last forever. I've spent a lifetime in front of cameras, pretending to be men who face danger without blinking. But tonight, I'm not pretending. I'm standing here as Clint Eastwood, an old man who's seen this world rise, fall, and circle back again. I've seen empires burn, seen good men lose their way, and watched a country that once stood on bedrock values start to crumble like an old house no one bothered to repair. And I'm telling you, something's coming. Not next year, not someday down the road. It's coming in 10 days, and most people, especially the good faithful ones, don't see it coming at all. Now, I'm not here to preach. I've read the Bible, wrestled with it, and carried its words through wars and heartbreak. But I know this much. Faith was never meant to make us comfortable. The early believers didn't sit in air-conditioned pews with lattes in hand. They walked through fire, literally. They sang in prisons, forgave their killers, and held fast when the whole world told them to bow. And somehow, we traded that fire for comfort. We built churches like shopping malls, convinced ourselves that ease was a blessing instead of a test. But comfort, it dulls the edge of courage. You can feel it in the air right now, the hum of change, the shifting underfoot. There are systems being built, rules being written, and technologies being installed that will decide who gets to speak, who gets to work, who gets to belong. They'll call it progress or safety or equality, but deep down it's about control, and when that control tightens, faith will be the first casualty. You'll wake up one day and realize that standing for truth costs more than you ever imagined. I've seen enough to know that history repeats itself. Every empire that forgot the price of freedom paid it dearly, and every generation that believed it can't happen here ended up learning the hard way that it can. So, I'm not here to scare you, I'm here to wake you. You've got 10 days, maybe less, before the curtain rises on a new act in this long American story. The question is, will you be ready when the lights hit? Will you stand when the world kneels? I've faced villains on screen, but the real battle isn't out there, it's in here, in the soul. And what's coming won't just test your courage, it'll reveal it. Because when the world starts shaking, the only thing that stands is truth. And truth, my friends, doesn't bend. When I look around these days, I see a faith that's gotten a little too comfortable. I've walked into churches that look more like concert halls, where the lights flash, the coffee flows, and the message sounds more like a self-help seminar than a call to conviction. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with joy, or music, or a good cup of coffee. But somewhere between the smoke machines and the slogans, we've started treating faith like a product instead of a fire. And fire, it's not meant to be cozy. It's meant to burn, to refine, to make you stronger than you were before. When I was younger, I met men who carried their faith like they carried their scars with pride, with purpose. They didn't quote verses to look wise, they lived them when it cost them something. I remember a soldier I once knew in Korea, quiet man, humble, but when the shells hit and fear filled the air, he didn't panic, he prayed. He knelt in the mud, and the men around him knelt too, not because he told them to, but because courage like that is contagious. That's the kind of faith I'm talking about, the kind that shines brightest when the world goes dark. Today, too many believers have built their houses on comfort. We sing about faith, but we flinch at sacrifice. We talk about carrying our cross, but we won't even risk being disliked. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that the first followers of Christ didn't have microphones or stages. They had prisons, whips, and hungry lions waiting in the dark. And yet they sang, they rejoiced in being counted worthy to suffer for something eternal. Can you imagine that? Smiling in the face of death because you believed that truth was worth more than breath? Maybe that's what we've lost, the raw edge of conviction. We've traded grit for gloss, holiness for popularity. We want heaven's promise without walking its hard road. But comfort, as sweet as it feels, is a silent thief. It steals your courage, your purpose, your edge. It makes you forget who you are and why you started believing in the first place. I'm not saying throw out the songs or tear down the churches. I'm saying light the fire again. Let your faith cost you something. Let it make you uncomfortable. Because the world doesn't need another polite believer. It needs people who stand when standing hurts, who speak when silence feels safer, who live like truth still matters. That's the faith that built civilizations. That's the faith that moves mountains, and it's time we remembered it. You know, there's a strange thing about comfort. It tricks you into thinking you're safe. For generations, we've lived under the warm glow of freedom like a campfire that never seemed to go out. We were born into it, raised to believe it would always be there, that someone else had already done the hard work of keeping the wolves away. Our grandparents built the fences, fought the battles, and laid the moral foundations of this country with blood and sweat, and we just moved into the house they built. We sat in their chairs, looked out their windows, and assumed the walls would hold forever. But a house, no matter how strong, crumbles if nobody maintains it. I remember when I was a kid, my father used to say, "Freedom isn't inherited, it's rented, and the rent's due every generation." Back then I didn't get it. I thought he was just being dramatic, like fathers tend to be. But he was right. We stopped paying the rent. We let the termites in slowly, quietly. A compromise here, a silence there. We told ourselves that if we just stayed polite, if we didn't make waves, the world would leave us alone. But the truth is, the world never leaves you alone. It just waits for you to stop watching. History doesn't care about our comfort or our constitution. History only listens to those who show up and defend what they believe in. We assumed the ink on a piece of paper was enough to keep evil in check. But paper can burn, and promises fade when no one's left with the courage to keep them. Look around, you can see it. The values that once held us together are being rewritten, not with fire or swords, but with apathy. People don't lose freedom in a single blow. They lose it by degrees, the way daylight fades into dusk. Maybe we thought the fight was over because we were too young to remember what it cost. Maybe we believed we could build a safe life without ever drawing a line in the sand. But the moment you stop defending something, you start losing it. Faith, truth, freedom, they don't survive on autopilot. They demand watchmen, not spectators. I've seen a lot of battles, some on screen, some off. The hardest ones aren't fought with bullets, they're fought with conviction. And that's what we're losing, conviction. The fire that says, "I'll stand even if no one else does." You can't legislate that. You can only live it. So, if you're still clinging to the illusion that we're safe because of what's written on paper, it's time to wake up. The walls are cracking, and the rent's long overdue. You ever notice how every great change in history starts quietly? It doesn't come with a bang, it comes with a whisper. A new law passed for your safety. A new system introduced for your convenience. And before you know it, the cage is built, and you've been walking right into it, thinking it was progress. I've seen this pattern before on the battlefield, in politics, in life. Control rarely calls itself control. It wears a smile, shakes your hand, and tells you it's here to help. But underneath that grin is a contract written in fine print, and most folks never bother to read it. By the end of this October, they say there's going to be a new kind of system rolling out, a digital identification program. Sounds harmless, right? We've already got fingerprints, face scans, passwords, and cards. But this one's different. This one ties it all together: your money, your work, your travel, your voice. You'll need it to buy, to sell, to exist inside the grid, and on the surface it'll look clean, efficient, even moral. But buried deep in its code will be a line that decides who belongs and who doesn't. Speak the wrong truth, post the wrong opinion, believe the wrong thing, and the system will quietly shut the door on you. Not with guns or sirens, but with silence. No access. No income. No place in the world you thought was yours. Now, I'm not talking science fiction. I'm talking about what's already happening in pieces all over the globe. People losing jobs because of what they believe. Bank accounts frozen for supporting the wrong cause. Technology watching, measuring, predicting behavior until freedom becomes a memory, not a right. And the cruelest part? They'll tell you it's for public safety. They'll say it's to protect the vulnerable, to prevent hate, to make life fair. That's how every cage gets built, with the language of compassion. I've lived long enough to know this. When a man trades liberty for comfort, he always loses both. The question isn't whether the world will change, it always does. The question is what kind of people we'll be when it does. Will we be the kind who bow to convenience or the kind who stand for conviction? Maybe I sound like an old man shouting into the wind, but I've seen where this road leads. I've walked through towns rebuilt after war, where people once said, "It can't happen here." It did, and it can again. So, if you still believe your faith, your voice, your freedom are safe because someone promised they would be, look closer. The bars are being built in plain sight, and the key to the cage is called compliance. You ever walk through a town just before a storm hits? The sky goes still, the air turns heavy, and yet people keep mowing their lawns, chatting on porches, pretending the wind isn't about to tear their roofs off. That's what I see happening to faith today. There's a storm on the horizon, big, dark, and coming fast, and most believers are too busy scrolling, arguing, and chasing approval to even look up. I've been around long enough to know what complacency looks like. It doesn't show up as rebellion or anger, it shows up as distraction. It's a soft kind of blindness, the kind that convinces you you're fine when you're anything but. I walk into churches now and see folks debating over music styles, dress codes, and coffee flavors, while the walls around them are cracking. We've got believers who can quote scripture but can't stand up for truth when it costs them a thing. We've got preachers polishing their image more than their message, trying to sound relevant instead of righteous. And meanwhile, the ground beneath their feet is shifting. Faith is becoming a fashion statement, something to post about, not live by. But faith that never gets tested isn't faith, it's sentiment. You see, the greatest danger to the soul isn't persecution, it's comfort. Persecution wakes you up. Comfort lulls you to sleep. The early church thrived under pressure because they knew what they stood for. Today, too many Christians stand for nothing in particular, as long as it doesn't make them unpopular. They want to be loved by a world that's forgotten what love even means. But here's the truth. The world never hated Christians for being hateful. It hated them for being holy, and holiness will always offend the corrupt. I've seen this kind of blindness before in Hollywood, in politics, even in war. People think they're immune until the cost comes due. I remember a young actor once asked me, "Clint, when do you know it's time to take a stand?" I told him, if you're asking that question, it's already time. You don't wait for the fire to start building character. You build it before the match is lit. The sad thing is, most people won't see it until it's too late. They'll realize when the pressure comes that their faith was built on sand, but there's still hope. Because blindness can be healed, but only if you open your eyes. Maybe that's why I'm still here, still talking, still trying to shake a few folks awake before the storm hits. Because the truth is simple. You can't fight what you refuse to see, and you can't stand for what you don't believe enough to lose. I've learned that a man doesn't know what he truly believes until the ground beneath him starts to crack. It's easy to talk about faith when the sun's out and the paycheck clears. But when the sky turns black, when everything you trusted starts slipping through your fingers, that's when faith steps out of the shadows and shows its face. I've seen that moment more times than I can count. In war zones, on movie sets, in hospital rooms where the beeping slows to silence, you look into a person's eyes and you can tell who's standing on rock and who's sinking in sand. What's coming now, this tightening of control, this age of fear and compromise, it's going to draw that line clearer than ever before. We're heading into a time when faith won't be a Sunday habit. It'll be a lifeline. The kind of faith that doesn't flinch when comfort disappears. The kind that doesn't trade conviction for applause. You can't fake that kind of belief. You either have it or you don't. I remember once shooting a scene in the desert. The heat was brutal, wind whipping the sand into your eyes, crew exhausted, tempers short. We had one more take left in us, and everyone wanted to quit. But the camera kept rolling, and I told myself, if you want the truth, you've got to suffer for it. That day taught me something. Endurance reveals authenticity. It's the same with faith. When everything comfortable gets stripped away, what's left, what remains unshakable, that's who you really are. Most people don't fail faith because they stop believing. They fail because they start compromising. Just this once, they say. It's not a big deal. But little by little, those small bends become a full bow, and before they know it, they're kneeling to something they never meant to serve. Faith that costs you nothing isn't faith, it's decoration. The test ahead isn't designed to destroy us. It's meant to reveal us. It's going to separate the talkers from the doers, the Sunday believers from the seven-day disciples. When the pressure hits, some will run, some will rationalize, but a few will stand. And those few, those stubborn, unyielding souls who'd rather lose the world than lose their integrity, they're the ones who will carry the flame through the darkness. I'm not saying it'll be easy. Hell, it'll be the hardest thing you ever do. But the truth is, easy never made anyone strong. When this storm comes, and it's coming, remember this. Faith isn't proven in what you gain, it's proven in what you refuse to surrender. You know, I've always believed that fire doesn't destroy what's real, it reveals it. Gold isn't pure until it's been through the flames. Steel isn't strong until it's been forged under heat and hammer. And faith, real faith, works the same way. For too long we've had it easy in the West. We've lived in a kind of spiritual air conditioning, safe and comfortable, mistaking peace for strength. But comfort doesn't build character, it dulls it. Every time in history when the church lost its edge, persecution came along and sharpened it again. I think about the first followers of Christ, simple fishermen, tax collectors, ordinary people who found something worth dying for. They weren't the powerful or the polished. They didn't have cathedrals or choirs. What they had was conviction. Rome tried to break them with lions and fire, but the more they burned, the brighter they shone. Faith spread like wildfire because it was proven in pain. You couldn't fake it. You couldn't buy it. It was the kind of belief that made emperors tremble and kingdoms fall. Then came the centuries, dark ones, bright ones, and everything between. The Reformation, men and women risking everything just to read the word in their own language. Then the underground churches in China, believers whispering hymns in the night so they wouldn't be heard, and yet their faith grew stronger. I've met people from those places, eyes steady, voices calm. You can feel the courage in their silence. They don't complain about the cost of faith. They're grateful it's worth paying. Now, look at us. We've grown used to applause and freedom, to a version of faith that never offends, never risks, never costs. But I'll tell you what's coming. It's a refining fire. The era of cultural Christianity, the comfortable kind, is ending. Not because God abandoned us, but because He's calling us back to something real. Persecution doesn't kill the church, it purifies it. It burns away the vanity, the politics, the half-hearted devotion. What's left after the smoke clears is something unbreakable. I've seen that kind of refining in my own life. In the moments when everything I built came crashing down, I learned what really mattered. When you lose the noise, you find the truth. Maybe that's what's happening to us now. The noise is being stripped away. Maybe this isn't the end at all. Maybe it's the start of something honest. So if you feel the fire coming, don't be afraid of it. Stand in it. Let it burn away what's false. Because faith that survives the flames doesn't come out weaker, it comes out shining. And maybe, just maybe, that's what we've needed all along. I've always believed a man ought to know where he stands before the storm hits, because when the wind starts howling and the lights go out, that's no time to start figuring out who you are. The time to decide is now, while you still can. You see, we're standing at the edge of a line that's about to be drawn deep and permanent. On one side, comfort. On the other, conviction. And before long, every one of us is going to have to pick which side we're on. No more middle ground, no more fence sitting. Faith has never been about playing it safe. It's about standing firm when everything safe gets stripped away. If you're listening to me now, I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to tell you the truth. You've got to prepare spiritually, mentally, even practically. Start by praying, not the soft kind of prayer that sounds good in public, but the raw kind, the kind that comes from your knees and your gut. Ask for courage, because courage doesn't just show up when you need it. It's built day by day, in the quiet moments when no one's watching. Then, get into the Word. Not just a verse here and there, but deep. Let it shape you the way time shapes stone. Know what you believe and why. Because when lies start sounding like truth, you'll need more than opinions to stand. You'll need roots, the kind that don't snap when the pressure comes. And don't walk this road alone. Find people who take their faith seriously, people who won't fold when the cost gets high. Build a circle that sharpens you, prays with you, stands with you. Because isolation is the enemy's oldest trick. Divide, weaken, and conquer. But a body of believers standing shoulder to shoulder, that's an army that can't be broken. Now, let's talk about preparation. The practical kind. Don't depend on systems that can be used to control you. Live simply. Be ready to lose what you can't keep in order to hold on to what you can't lose. They might take your comfort, your money, even your name, but they can't take your soul unless you hand it over. So make your choice now, before the pressure hits. When that moment comes and it's closer than you think, you'll either stand or fall based on what you've already decided in your heart. Choose Christ over comfort, truth over applause, faith over fear. Because history has shown this again and again. When the world demands surrender, the few who stand firm light the way for everyone else. Maybe that's your purpose. Maybe that's why you're still here, to be the one who doesn't back down when the world tells you to kneel.